There we go. Glad I thought of that. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is M. Ironstar, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Executive Director at the Saskatchewan Arts Alliance. I'm a mid-30s non-binary person with short brown hair, wearing brown Wayfarer-style glasses and a maroon hoodie. Before I acknowledge the lands that we're on, I'd like to start by acknowledging that I inhabit this land as a person of settler ancestry, and as such, I recognize that I have benefited from the colonization and stolen land, and that colonization has and continues to disrupt Indigenous well-being. We acknowledge the people who came before us on this land and all the knowledge that has been passed down since time immemorial. This land has been called home by Indigenous people. By honoring the land, we acknowledge the teachings and wisdom gained by peoples past and bring that knowledge into the present and future. Tonight, I'm speaking to you from Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Saulteaux, Cree, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis, where I'm grateful to live and work. As a provincial organization, the work of the Saskatchewan Arts Alliance reaches lands covered by Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10. So for those of you who might not be familiar, the Saskatchewan Arts Alliance is a nonpartisan, member-driven coalition of arts organizations that provides a collective voice for the arts community to various representatives, and we work to strengthen, support, and advance the arts ecosystem through advocacy, public education, research, policy development, and proactive leadership. And just first off, a couple of housekeeping things to address. We're really thankful to have Sue here from Saskatchewan Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services for providing ASL interpretation services. So with that, we just ask that you keep your video off unless you're speaking so that we can spotlight as we're kind of doing now. And we've also enabled the live transcription or the closed tuning, and you can toggle that feature on and off at the bottom of the screen. If you're having any technical difficulties, please do let us know, and we've got a few people on the call here who can help you out. We're going to be recording the event, and we're going to post it to our YouTube channel. So we just ask that you keep yourself muted to avoid any background noise. We do have questions, and please feel free to type them in the chat function, and feel free to share your name and where you're from in the chat. And if you're comfortable, list your preferred pronouns behind your name. We're planning on tonight's event to wrap up at about 8 o'clock, and we're going to be taking a short break at around 7:10. That's the goal. So just before I kind of give a little bit about how this event has come to be tonight, I'd like to take a moment to thank our funders, Sask Culture and Sask Arts, both of whom benefit through lottery ticket sales through Sask Lotteries. Proceeds from Sask Lotteries fund cultural organizations all across the province, and we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without this support. So this past May, Listen to This and the Arts Alliance partnered to host our first Pajama Party Politics online event. And it was a really lively and thoughtful discussion about accessibility and featured some wonderful artist interruptions. If you missed it and you want to check it out, we have it posted on our YouTube channel, and I would encourage that. It's really great. This event tonight is sort of a follow-up event to that, and it marks the start of a larger initiative and partnership between Listen to This and the Saskatchewan Arts Alliance. In coming months, we're going to work together to create a resource, a living document on accessibility in the province that will support a broader understanding of access through the disability cultural lens. We are really, really excited and honored to be working with LTD to bring this collaborative vision to life. Not only will it strengthen our understanding of disability culture as individuals and as an organization, it will also provide others with a baseline resource to start or further engaging with accessibility from a disability lens. We believe that this initial project that we're working with together with LTD on is likely the start of building a larger access framework to center our work and development. They're using this opportunity as a pilot kind of to explore ways of working with community to develop research with actionable results to drive positive change for the arts and cultural community of Saskatchewan. The work that we are embarking upon wouldn't be possible without the encouragement and a grant from Arts Action Research. The seed of the idea was born out of work that was done in the Sask Shift program held by Sask Arts, where LTD and Arts Action Research started working together. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Becky from Arts Action Research to talk a little bit about their work and involvement in this project. So thanks so much for being here.
Hello. That was a pass to me, right? I got that right. Yes, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Baumwall, she, her pronouns. I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York, and sending my love here from the States. I've had the absolute pleasure to work with Listen to This and Traci and Shelby in particular over the last, looking at Invisible Watch, over the last over a year and a half plus. I work with a consulting organization called Arts Action Research, which really centers the artistic process in arts leadership. And we were brought into a project called Sask Shift, and I was assigned very delightedly the partnership with Listen to This. So we've been working together for about a year and a half through Sask Shift, which is supported by Sask Creative and Sask Arts. And we have had the pleasure to work together and build a rapport and build a relationship through looking at Listen to This and what they're building and what they're navigating right now as an organization. In one of our sessions, we were talking about if I can be super frank, Traci, I hope that's okay. We were talking about how that Traci and Listen to This are the stewards of a lot of information, knowledge, and network, and that a lot of folks in the community come to Listen to This time and time again to ask questions that have of course evolving answers, but a lot of things are is a body of knowledge that Traci and Shelby and the rest of the team at LTD are asked to repeat time and time again. And when we were thinking, how do we take some of that labor away from Listen to This, but also continue to play the role of stewards of that information? And so I brought a resource that some of you may know that was very impactful here in the States called We See You White American Theater. And this was a document that was brought together and created by dozens of people of color who work in theater, speaking to the theater community at large, and especially their employers and collaborators, making some demands and also suggesting ways forward to make our theater space more equitable, more inclusive. And so I thought this is kind of an inspiration here. What if LTD created a document that was similar? And from there, of course, the people that listened to this took it and ran and kind of built it into a project that has a lot of heart and is very specific to the province. But also, as we've been saying, when you create a very specific story and tell your story, it often becomes universal in a way and can impact people far beyond the reaches of your life and space. So we're very hopeful that the project that we're launching, that LTD is launching, has the impact that it can have, and I think, and I'm very proud to say, I think it ought to have, and I'm very glad that hopefully this wealth of information from Listen to This, that it can we were saying the other day, like be a prism to shine out in specifics and also in bright color to the community, best practices from from a place with a lot of heart and a lot of knowledge and a lot of representation from the diverse community that Listen to This is going to be speaking to over the course of its creation. So thank you for having me, and very happy to meet many of you for the first time.
Okay. So Traci, yeah, you did a
Hello. I've got things showing up on my screen that I don't want to touch just in case I'll turn myself off or something. So um, welcome everybody. So very, very pleased to see everybody here and not see everybody here, but know that you're here by the list of names. Welcome, Max. I look forward to beginning this discussion or these discussions with you tonight. Just want to acknowledge that the project itself did receive funding for this first phase through Sask Arts and Creative Saskatchewan. So we're very grateful for that and for the belief in this project. And yeah, we're going to do what we call art interruptions throughout the evening. And part of that is in effort, just so that we're all on the same page together in some ways. Part of that is in effort of saying, first of all, this is centered around our arts and culture. So to bring arts and culture into it directly feels absolutely necessary. And it also feels like a way to break some of the intensity of the political discussion that could be taking place and give us, all of us, the community and those presenting, a chance to just sit back and take in some art. It's important for us to preference our care over the amount of information that's given or the time that's given to receiving information. So this is part of our attempt to, look after ourselves throughout this and hopefully help look after you. So I think that's really it in a nutshell. So before we move forward in discussion with Max and myself, I'm going to introduce you to the first artist that's going to present tonight. And their name is, where is it? I know the name, but I want to make sure I don't get this wrong. It is Nathan Copens, and Nathan is going to be presenting a song called Let's Make It Home, written and performed by him, who is a mad artist. So we'll give it over to Nathan.
All right, here we are. I hope everyone can hear. I didn't have time to join in on the tech. I was busy teaching other people how to play this silly little instrument. So I hope there aren't too many issues, but this is a song. Yeah, I'll play the song. It's not the most lighthearted song, but it's hopefully part of the show that I'm privileged to have Traci and Shelby working on. So yeah. Let's just make it home. We're driving through the cold winter storm. Wipers are going and the arguments flowing, and it's all we can do to keep warm. And I'm struggling like hell to see the tracks in front of me. So let's pull off the flight and just for tonight make it home. The snowflakes are huge, but they're smaller than the words that we use to throw gas on the fire when emotions run higher 'cause our ego's been too easily bruised, and my knuckles are turning white, but I'm too scared to care who's right. So let's put off the fight, and just for tonight make it home. Let's make it home. We can pick it up when we're inside. We'll be safe and warm. There'll be places we can hide. I'll have time to think it through, what I mean to say to you. So let's put off the fight, and just for tonight make it home. Let's just make it home. I'm tired and I'm cold to the bone. I'm going as slow as I can possibly go, and I'm barely holding on, and I've almost lost the red of the taillights up ahead, and we've got miles to go. So tonight, let's just make it home. I don't know how we got so heated. I just know we both feel defeated. None of this probably matters in the end. Let's just make it home. We're still on our way through the storm, but if we stick together and weather the weather, we'll be through it before too long. And when we wake up in bed, we can use our clearer heads, and we'll be glad that tonight we didn't lose sight of our home. Let's make it home. We can leave it at the door inside. We'll be safe and warm. We will have no need to hide. I'll have time to think it through, think about the words I use. So let's put off the fight, and just for tonight make it home. Let's put off the fight, and just for tonight make it home.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, I'm really now excited. I get to introduce Traci and Max, which is kind of cool, because I've had the pleasure of getting to know Traci probably over the last maybe 6 or 9 months or so, and it's been really great to get to know you more and to work together. And it's also really great to see Max and say hi, because I think it's probably a good 10 years ago now that we probably first got to know each other and got to be friends. So it's nice to kind of see each other again in this capacity. So thanks for being here tonight with us.
It's nice to see you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really good to see you. It's nice to see everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. So it looks like the bios of Traci and Max are getting posted in there. So I'm not going to reiterate those, but I'll pass it over to you folks to go on with the rest of the evening. Thanks again.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Em. Hi, Max.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. And you?
Oh, busy, but when am I not? I just put up a show at Tangled Art Gallery. So that goes up tomorrow. That's a 2-year project and it's funded by Canada Council. So I'm really, really thrilled because it's all related to disability arts and the disability arts movement and just getting the word out. So I'm really, really thrilled about that. It's an
Beautiful.
honor. Yeah.
Congratulations. And for anyone who doesn't know, you can actually book virtual tours to see that. And I highly recommend that. Shelby has been doing that for LTD at the various shows through Tangled. And wow, it wonderful, wonderful to be a part of that gallery and the work that's being explored and presented through the gallery. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment because I realize I forgot. So, obviously, I'm Tracy, and my pronouns are she, her, they, them. And tonight, I'm wearing some blue and gold pajamas with a gray and white sweater, big collared sweater over it. My hair is fairly long, brown, with a sweep of white in it, and I've got part of it up in a comb. And I have like bluish, gray, brown tortoiseshell glasses on that are fairly large, and just a touch of makeup.
And I guess it's my turn to
It
say
is.
my 2 cents. So I'm wearing a black t-shirt as usual. My hair is blonde, and I have a beard and a mustache. I am white presenting. I think that's it. I have blue eyes. Yeah, that's me.
Great.
Oh yeah, and my background is really uneventful. It's just a white wall. So
It's better than mine trying to hide everything out of sight of the camera. But anyway.
yours is character, Tracy.
Oh, thank you, Max. You're very generous. So, as Becky so eloquently presented, thanks, Becky, at the beginning of the conversation here, we're beginning a project that will help us create this living document that we will revisit likely on a yearly basis with a committee, and then also revisit when there needs to be more than just a committee visit to it. We're hoping at the end of this phase of the project to actually do a creative response to our findings. So that would be a separate project, but we'd be really excited to launch into that. So I know the time is a little less expanded than I imagined when we were setting this up. So I'll move forward with some of the things that we're thinking about. So we're thinking about access and in general, but we are really specifically thinking about access in Saskatchewan. And so the document will be centered around the idea of access within our province. And we'll be responding to, I mean, some very general tenets around access that people might not yet be considering in our province, and talking about some of the things that folks like Max and myself and many others here would think about, and that is, looking at creation as care, looking at access intimacy, and really being forthright and honest about where Saskatchewan is in the playing field around access, and finding out how people feel around this topic here in Saskatchewan. So it might feel it's probably going to land as quite basic, Max, when I frame these couple of things that we're thinking about.
Yeah.
But I think they're good launching. They're good to launch off of. The first one that I would put forward. Give me a moment because I've got lots of things written here. Yeah. So when we're speaking about access, and maybe more specifically access in Saskatchewan, it's going to be both. What do you feel is important to consider found as a foundation,
Mhm.
and in more in a general way?
Yeah, and you're talking about access in general, right? Like not just with art, but with everything, right?
Well, we are talking about the arts sector more specifically.
Okay.
So that's where we would frame it, and then I mean it's going to trickle into other things anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think like I'll just start with what I proposed to Canada Council basically, which was just that I think we need to basically have a model around, or what I said was that we need to have a model around stuff that like not just physical disabilities, but the idea of invisible disability as well, and how that gets, this idea of access relating to not only the stereotypes, and putting a sign up and putting a ramp up and just saying that's access, click, but actually talking about how people take in environments, how people who have disabilities are navigating these environments, and particularly troubling the space of the white cube in the gallery, and putting in for example, heights of certain works at a certain distance, so that wheelchair users can actually engage with the work. In the case, one of the things we did at my show, that I put up was we put planks, small wooden planks, so that people with who have canes can figure out where the works are, so like that sort of thing. But then also just talking about environments and caring for people, in the sense that leaving space for people to engage with the time that they need, creating what we call an access rider, which is something where people articulate their needs. Perhaps some people need a timeout, and when they work, some people need certain types of foods. Some people can't have certain types of foods. Some people need spaces that are quiet and that are not overly, and we need to give people those spaces. I'm all over the place, but when I talk about this, we need to move beyond the idea of ableism and the idea that that it's a one size fits all approach. Because when we do that, we are actually shutting people out, and we need to sort of acknowledge that we live in an ableist world, that there are certain things that are taken for granted, that shouldn't be taken for granted. And one of them in the arts is just this idea of decolonizing environments, having a Eurocentric view, not having an ableist view. All of that fits together, right? And so, I mean, I've been working on this as I go, and curation is care, is the idea of like curating the artist as opposed to just producing work for a capitalist environment, right? Because what happens, artists, we're kind of the canary in the mine shaft. Like a lot of the time when something is toxic, the artists are often the first people to notice. I know in my own environment, I was always the sensitive one, the one that was like, oh God, what now? And the thing is, like, yeah, like you end up keeping your mouth shut and just not being able to speak about these things. But we're kind of, through disability arts, what we can do is basically talk about these things. We have a space where we can open up and say, I have Asperger's, and I'm autistic and I need space. Like, for example, at my own openings, I've had to leave rooms and people are like, what's wrong? Like, that's not a very professional thing to do. But what they don't understand is that I'm completely saturated and I can't take in any more information. And it's not that I don't love people, but like, you can't take in anymore. And so you start to space out, and then you're not talking to people anymore. That's my example of something I need. Another thing, You know, sometimes I talk very directly and people can be like, oh, and mistake what I say for being angry or something when really I'm just being direct and honest. You know, again, I have problems with social cues sometimes. These are all things I can talk about in a non-ableist environment, you know, where I can openly talk about these things. And the arts sector, with all of its sensitive folks in it, should be more open to these things. And I find here in Toronto, we don't have we have a huge disability arts community here, and I feel wonderful to be able to share it with you in the sense that I can say, you know, when I moved, I had no idea any of this existed. I had no idea that there was even a movement going on. And, you know, but there is, I mean, we are the new avant-garde. We are, you know, articulating new spaces where people can speak. We are, you know, we are speaking for the first time, taking back our power, and also in doing so joyfully and in ways that are productive, and in the sense that, you know, we're allowed to speak. And in doing that, we create a better environment for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel, it's so important today to begin to, or lead with this idea that access needs to be considered for the 72% of people living with disability that wouldn't be considered having a visible disability. And that's very, very challenging, or we find it very challenging at LTD,
Mhm.
because you know, for many years, John Lepke and I have been working really closely together and hand in hand with these things called disability audits and outreach for education and so forth. And you know, we have to laugh instead of cry sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we do, but it's very frustrating
Mhm.
when it's analyzed a little more than beyond the immediate interaction. It's really frustrating to be a part of the assumption that because you're not in a wheelchair, or you don't have a cane or a
Right.
walker, that you're not disabled. And it's not only frustrating personally, because it is, but it's very frustrating when you are working to help or attempt to support people developing a more sophisticated understanding of disability, and you hear over and over again that you know, you're a savior or a martyr because you work with these quote unquote these people.
It's
And that's,
so
it's archaic.
so archaic and
Yeah,
so wrong. Yeah, like it just makes my stomach turn.
yeah.
You know, I mean, like one of the terms that has really empowered me, and that I come out, and I just came out in a previous panel tonight before I was just talking to a bunch of folks at Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, with Eliza Chandler and a bunch of people over there. And I got into my discussion of being a psychiatric survivor, okay, and talking about what that means. And you know, I spent some of my time in the ward at the hospital in Regina. That was my reality. And, you know, I talked openly about it. I don't mind talking about it because I think it's really important for people to understand. I look like a white cis dude now, you know, because I transitioned, because I left Regina and came out, you know, and I mean, I look like a dude on the street. People think, oh, you know, white privileged dude. But I actually have a psychiatric history. I have a whole bunch of stuff going on inside me that I don't, you know, that is assumed that I don't have. And so, you know, I think it's just really, really important to understand that people have invisible histories, right? And that, you know, just because somebody doesn't look like they are, you know, disabled, it doesn't mean that they don't have that history and that they don't have needs. And that do you know what I mean? Like,
Ooh,
I've had to learn how to speak, and I'm still stumbling along trying to figure that out.
Yeah, well, and I think, as somebody who focuses, my work focuses on voice and somatic voice and movement. I
Yeah,
have been talking about this with people for a very long time. I feel deliberately disruptive when it comes to this idea of this is how we need to present, this is how we need to communicate, this is how we need to speak in order to be assumed anything. Like,
that's true. Yeah,
especially in these places where we come together to share knowledge with folks who are interested in gathering knowledge and most likely interrupting or disrupting the status quo. And even
absolutely.
in that, though, there needs to be room for people like yourself or myself when my psychiatric symptoms are stimmed like they are right now, that I don't feel I can't show up like I was educated to believe I couldn't do for very many years and believed it and hid myself. I recently had the privilege of being in a room with conversation with a doctor who's a crip poet, and they said something to the effect of, I'm a psychiatric survivor. I
Yeah.
would love for you, because I asked a question, what would be something you'd want to talk about if you had anything you could bring to funders in Canada? And they mentioned that they would like funders to understand it's very difficult to write a grant when you're in a psychiatric episode. So
Yes, it is.
understand that either you learn to find people who can, look at the document and say, okay, yep, given the circumstances, great. I understand what's being presented here, or understand the need, the absolute need for flexibility in deadlines for grants because, you know, through and through, disability fluctuates. It's not like oh, I'm disabled and everything does this. That doesn't exist in our world.
No,
So, yeah.
no. And flexibility is so important.
Mm,
The idea of crip time,
yeah.
the idea of giving people space and time to get done what they need to get done. The idea of, someone doing things in their time as opposed to being pushed to do things on time according to a traditional ableist clock, for example, giving people space to do that. And I think like, yeah, grant writing is stressful enough. I'm just noticing in the chat.
I know I
It's
can't go
stressful
there because I
enough
get so
without
distracted.
dealing with a psychiatric episode
Yeah.
and, medication changes and trying to figure out the balance between one's creative self and one's need to take care of oneself. These are all things that we navigate on a day-to-day basis, but no one sees them. And then you go out in public, and if you're like me, you end up on the subway in an episode, and there's people everywhere. And Toronto it puts me in overdrive. It's not easy for me to live here as someone who has these neurodivergent tendencies. I
Yeah.
don't know what to do some days. And I'm telling you, like, I mean, we all need that care. We all need that space. We all need that time. And that has to be put into, and one should never, as they say, judge a book by the cover. I think we need to slow down and remember that people have stories, and again, that invisible history, and just not assume anything.
Yeah.
How do they say, assuming makes an ass out of you and me.
I've not heard that, but thank you. That's good. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's
The
true.
I feel relative to the discussions that Jessica and Em and Ariana and Shelby and myself were having, I feel like I just want to frame something in what is important to understand about access. So some of the foundational things that we will think about constantly and help people consider constantly are cost considerations or cost barriers, time considerations. Max, you just brought up crip time, and understanding that, transportation considerations, of course, nutrition considerations, language considerations, And then physical and digital space, understanding the need to create certain physical and digital space to really really bring the word access forward inside of that. Because although, well, I mean, this is a bit facetious of me, but although there better be a ramp or a way to get in the door in 2022, in our experience at LTD as a theater company, there isn't always here in Saskatchewan. So we've got that going on. But those other things are, very, very, very important to put forward. The other thing, in terms of just summarizing something, I'm reading a little bit here, folks, because I need to today. But the other thing is just the consideration of making room for the disrupting of typical process and function, and putting the voice and view of disabled people very forward, deaf and disabled people very forward. And when I say disabled, I'm talking about the injured, sick, chronically ill, spoonies, neurodivergence, all of that. I'm just using the word disabled to hold that
All of that.
information.
Yeah.
So those are things that, in my mind, unless they are things that are cost prohibitive, because we know those exist, those are things that, if you want to consider yourself an accessible organization, they have to be spinning at the spiritual center, at the very central axis of your organization, right from the start. Because otherwise, if they are being responded to by need only, not that that's wrong.
Right.
However, if you want to consider yourself accessible, which many people do now in lingo, then I think you need to know that those things have to be thought
Part
out
of it.
and part of the actual policy that you are, that makes you who you are. And then there's the rest of the stuff that we'll hopefully get some time to speak about tonight, which is
What-
actually the stuff that makes us in body and mind feel like we belong, and like there's a place for us to be there in some form, which might be an awkward comfortableness for some of us. I mean, I never quite feel comfortable. So an awkward or discomfortable comfort, it's just like, that's in our view, that's a little bit of the work that we're starting to do in this document. Of course, laying the tenets out that are foundational, so that people actually have them to look at. But as importantly, not more or less, as importantly, the things that make us and allow us, invite us to exhale when we show up in a room or on a Zoom meeting or whatever it is, and feel like we belong and we deserve to be here every bit as much as anyone else does, regardless of whether or not our emotions are flared and we choose not to disrupt that or amputate them. The way we look, because we haven't had the energy to get ready in order to present, or any other thing that might prevent us to come forward in these kinds of political conversations, or, as importantly, maybe more importantly in some ways, to the party of arts and culture. Because more and more we understand that still today, and not just in Regina by any means, not just in Saskatchewan by any means, but nationally, that disabled people still largely don't feel like there's any opportunity for them in the arts.
That's right.
And
It's
that has to change.
It does. It does. Shelby just messaged me and said it's break time. Is it break time?
Shelby, I was like, she just messaged me too, but she knows I don't look. It's not break time exactly, I don't think. I believe, is it a bio break time?
Yes, it's a bio break time.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Shel.
John. That's true.
Thanks, Shelby.
Keep going.
Okay, so folks, thank you. A 5-minute bio break, and we'll be back.
Okay,
I look
5
forward
minutes.
next to continue.
Sounds good.
So, folks, I'd like to introduce to you Fatima. So, Fatima Nafisa, who is a deaf and ASL poet and performer, and one of the founding members of the Deaf Crows, is going to present her self-written, her self-created poem, Never Saw. Thanks.
Can you hear me okay? All right, just making sure we're ready. I'm crawling on the carpet of a concrete floor, watching my mother's hands. I've come to the end of my ability to hear. I cannot do more. Oh, mother, I do understand from watching. And I tell my mother, don't worry. I understand you. I am all right. I've always moved my hands when I talk. And this is how I talk to her. And she does understand me a little bit, but I can't hear when she talks to me. But through her hands, I do. If we will be the same age as you were a child once, your soul and my soul, would they be different or the same in this world? I don't know. My mother and I had a language. We shared that language. Bad advice took that away. I'm lost. Now I need to speak to prove my worth. Do not need sign language. People look down on me. I need you to stand by me. Not stand by an outsider. Listen to me. Don't listen to others. But it's you who's not listening. For sign language was with me at my birth. I found it later. I didn't know. It was with me all along. You wonder why I'm quiet. Maybe you can't hear me. You're too busy talking. You're not listening. My emotions that are endless. I want to scream away and take away my turbulent emotions from moody every day and night people. They look down on me. They think my feelings are negative. They don't accept my emotions. They want to help. But how? Mother, where are you? Don't forget that I am your daughter. Don't forget I am your deaf daughter. what hurts me, I never heard my family's sign language with their hands. Mother, can you change the hearing world for me so I can be your deaf daughter? Are you ready to fit in to my world? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
So Max and I will continue with the conversation about access as it relates a little bit to what the project initiative is. Was thinking that maybe, Max, we could segue into something about like what is access intimacy and why is it important? That could be access intimacy, creation as care. Why are those considerations important today for people interested in building access into their central axis?
No, that's important. I mean, I think we have to kind of to start with, you kind of got to move past, again, we've talked about this, like the stereotype associated with disability, and move into more of an idea of a holistic, open view that doesn't just involve, the body, but that involves the whole person. I think, again, and I'll start with the curation as care thing again, because I think that that's kind of where again, the root of curator is care, and that's one of my jobs. I'm a curator. I work in the disability arts. I work in the arts. But from that space, I was able to sort of talk about curating the person as opposed to curating the art, or the art and the person are the same thing to me. And so like when I look at art, I'm not just looking at it as a product, as something that impresses someone, or because it's realistic. No, I'm thinking about the person making it. I'm thinking about how where does that person come from, what's informing them, who are they. I'm interested in people. I want to know more about people. And from that, we can talk about access needs. We can talk about, what a person needs. And, again, approaching each person as an individual, approaching each person as someone with something to offer, and approaching, each person as somebody with something to say, and getting out of the way and not filling up the space with what I assume it is, and letting that person speak. And that's one of the things that I need to constantly say to myself, get out of the way, let the person talk, let them be themselves, and and listen, and then care for that as I go. And again, I'm learning this as I go. So, I feel like kind of like I've been put in this position where I'm creating this way of being, and I've been put in this position where I've had to sort of, tell other people about it. And it seems so straightforward to me. I mean, it's about empathy, it's about being empathetic towards another person's way of being, and not just like railroading over them with something that I assume they are, right? I think like access is sort of something, and again, you talked about, this idea of access. And access, we say at Tangled, access is love. It's a way of caring for somebody's being. It's not just box check, and it's also just moving into these spaces and understanding, that people can speak for themselves, and just not, making that assumption that because someone is disabled that they can't speak for themselves, that they don't have the ability to speak for themselves, and that they don't know what they need. People know what they need. People can say what they need. It's not difficult. All you have to do is ask. Now I'm getting all passionate about it, but I mean, this is what I do. I think, like, I mean, to me, it's so obvious, how can people miss, this capacity that we should have as humans to just relate to other people at the level they need to be, not to meet them at the level they need, not at the level we think they need, or, to assume we know more than somebody, to maintain a sense of humility, heaven forbid, a sense of humility, I think, and to get out of the way and let people ask for what they need and not shame them and not falling into those patterns of shame either. Because I do think that shame is one way that we are manipulated. We are shamed, we're manipulated into shame. And then, we stay silent, and then people go about their business. And, like, for me, like, that's how it was for years. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience of just being shamed, into silence. Oh, you can't cut the mustard because you're not, a neurotypical, and you have these mental health problems, and don't tell anyone about the fact that you spent 6 hours in the emergency room, and don't talk to anybody about the fact that you're having a psychiatric or a psychiatric episode. And by the way, you still have these 3 things due tomorrow and a job to keep. So, let's just ignore all of that, and let's just keep pushing until we collapse. I really think we need more room in the world to talk about these needs, and people and need to care for where they're coming from, and to just, like I said, just understand that people can speak for themselves, and that not to infantilize, not to minimize, not to crush, not to, do you know what I mean? Like, it needs to be genuine. It, like Vanessa says here, it needs to be genuine and based out of empathy and care. And it feels like an annoyance, and it does feel like, oh my God, like, if I speak, I'm a burden. I'm a burden. And that's like, and then here we are again, silent. Oh, I'm a hassle. Oh, I'm a burden. Oh, I shouldn't say these things. Well, how in the heck? And then turn around 5 minutes later, and they want to meet their quota of whatever disability thing is. And suddenly, you're the unicorn in the room, and it's like, oh, here we go again. Oh, how do we find a middle ground in all of this? I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make, I can't wait to listen to the recordings. You made so many poignant points inside of there, and they're all really important, I think, for understanding access. I'm interested, of course, we've talked about this before. Tangled, yourself, and
Yeah,
others within Tangled are, like, we look to you in many ways, and
absolutely.
have for some time, for our own learning and so forth. One of the things that, again, I'll bring John up in, because we're often in the presentations or the audits together. One of the things that we're pretty mindful about here in Saskatchewan is saying, yep, access is certainly about empathy. Yep, access is certainly about love. Yep, access is
Oh,
certainly about kindness. But we
but
we truly say, but we need to go back to understanding access, because we have encountered so many people who are very kind and very empathetic and very loving, who feel like there's absolutely nothing to learn if you're going to
oh,
if you're going
good.
to act
No.
accordingly. And that is why, that is one of the reasons we want to create this document. Not like a document is going to change everything, but to help us come together in a way, some unifying understanding of what, through the disability cultural lens, access means, for the purpose of making more space for disabled people to
Yeah,
be not only audience members or viewers in galleries, but
participants.
themselves, artists.
Yeah,
Like,
artists. Yeah,
it's quite simple, but there is for us, I think there is anyways, I think there is a need in Saskatchewan to be really mindful that we don't I was gonna say the word collapse, and I think it's fair for some of us. Don't collapse into making too much space for those beautiful things such as kindness, empathy, and love to take too much space in this conversation yet, because it's early. Still today, I'll give you a framework. Today at 5 o'clock, so 1 hour before we met, I was listening to an artist who was all just recently told by a funder not to disclose
Oh,
their disability in order to stay more for to be more likely that they would receive funding. Now, there's a whole bunch of other story around that. What I witnessed was excruciatingly painful from the perspective of this
yep.
human who is a very respected artist in our province. And
Hmm.
I feel like it's okay for us. It's really important for us to accept that the barriers that are still causing people to leave the sector
Yep.
or not even consider art as a possibility are really important to understand. And you need to let your ego go, or
Yep.
what
You do.
you witness in your small community, if you will, of people. And you need to understand that there's still some really wildly archaic barriers, not only in Saskatchewan, but in Canada, that
Yep.
prevent people from the consideration of becoming an artist or becoming somebody who is an integral part of the arts sector, like a producer or a curator or an arts administrator, etc.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel very privileged out here in Toronto because we are really open about these things. Like people just talk about them, like, it's well, here's the weather, and by the way, this happened last night, and and we carry on with our day, and this is within Tangled, keep in mind, so Tangled is a bit of a bubble. I mean, there's a lot of galleries that do not conform to that way of being. And I kind of feel like I'm in utopia, because I mean, after I came from Saskatchewan. I know how it is. I mean, I know how much I had to hold in for 40 years. And I'm 46 now, and I feel like I'm kind of in a rebirth, because I've been able to speak for the first time, and it really is sad because I think I could have done a lot more, knowing what I know now. But the thing is, at least I'm able to share it with you. And the thing is, I mean, yeah, like I think out here disclosing is not, it's just not, it's part of the thing. Like you're encouraged to disclose. You're encouraged to be open and honest so that you can get what you need. I mean, even through Ontario Works, through OW, which is the equivalent of social assistance. Before they would charge you basically if you had a grant, an arts grant. Now, we have gone and done some advocacy work through Tangled, and now, people aren't getting basically dinged for having a grant, whereas before it counted as income, right? So this is all stuff that we're building on, and granted, we're building on it in the middle of a housing crisis in this city, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But the good thing is, we are modeling what it's like to be open about this stuff. And I don't know why it's so hard for people, like why people can't be open. I mean, it's so much better when you can have an open, honest conversation about these issues. It's easier, less stressful for everyone. And I mean, it's not like, there isn't anybody out there dealing with it. It's just, I don't understand, this need to well, don't disclose, because it's like, no, there's a disability arts movement going on in Canada. How can you be unaware of that? Google it.
That's right.
It's not
Google it.
hard. Like I'm in the middle of it. Like I'm telling you, like it's a real thing. Like we are not just a Toronto thing. It is something that began in the UK, for crying out loud. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Not, and I mean, we need to be more open, and we need to have those difficult conversations. And I know it's hard. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. But if you don't start being uncomfortable, nothing's going to change. If you don't start getting gritty, have fun.
Absolutely.
I really am glad I can have this conversation, because it's therapeutic. Honestly, like, I hope it's therapeutic for you and for everyone else too. But honestly, we need to be able to have open disclosure. We need to be able to acknowledge people have different needs. We need to be able to say, I'm disabled. I'm having a psychiatric episode. I'm sorry. This is part of my biology, but or maybe I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. But the thing is, it's part of my biology. I can't control this any more than I can control the weather.
Yes, exactly. I mean, again, what you just spoke of is so essential for like a broader and an integrated understanding. The idea, when we do the disability audits, we talk about this embracing awkwardness and discomfort is essential if you want to engage in access, in open access, intimate inclusion. And it's like, welcome to the world of being disabled.
Exactly.
We're accustomed to feeling awkward and uncomfortable, and it's not like you wish that on people.
No.
But you wish for people to be willing to join you in that, so that we can resolve things, right? But I find I can't read the chats too well when I'm speaking, because I'll go, I can't quite track it, but it's open discussion time right now, for a bit about what we've just brought. So let's just be curious if anybody here with us has anything they'd like to bring forward, or any questions or anything like that. And we could do whatever we need to do to encourage or support you, should you want to do so. You can use the chat, you can come off of mute, like probably raise your hand and come off mute, whatever you like. Carla.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, Max, and Tracy. What I was curious that you just reminded me of is, I'm curious, in the place and the community, the arts community that you have out there now, Max, would you feel that, well, I guess I'm horrible at asking questions. This is my—
Go ahead. It's fine.
I was going to say, like, here, it was difficult. It was a difficult decision for me to begin to publicly identify. And I was well into my 30s before I actually started using this, pride element. And I'm curious about how different you might feel that process is in your community, like in Toronto there, or in these other communities. Like, what would be the goal of more people now? Because I know for me, the only reason I ever spoke like title is thinking like, oh, maybe my nephew won't have to, like of a future thing. And I'm just curious if you feel that motion and that identifying language is like a necessary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like for us, at least for me in my experience with Tangled, for example, I mean, we're just people. Like, we're people. We all know we have, stuff going on. We all have disabilities. We all are and to identify is just to be part of community. Like, it's really that simple. It's really, really unfortunate, that to identify means ostracization. And I mean, I was out there, so I kind of know what you mean. Okay. Like, I remember what that felt like. And, there were some things that went on that were not very pleasant for me when I came out. But the thing is, I mean, someone once said to me, and this was years ago, you're only as sick as the secrets you keep. And for me, I don't keep secrets well. I just don't. I'm not the type of person. It's my personality. Okay. Like, I just can't hold things in for long periods of time. And oh God, and oh, great burden of the world. No, for me, it's like, I have to live my life openly. I just have to, and like, for me, I know there's other people out there that are struggling. I can't be the only one. I mean, I'm not that much of a megalomaniac. I mean, I know, like, they say things about artists, creative temperament, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, like I know there are other people who are also out there. And it's interesting how when you say it, then you give permission to other people to say it. And only one person's got to start saying it, and then another person says it, and then another person says it, and the next thing you know, you've got a whole constellation of people, and they're all saying it, and you're not the only one, but someone's got to make that step and be the first person to say it. And that's the hard part, because you always risk, being that person, who nobody wants to talk to, because heaven forbid, but to speak out here is just to be part of community. It really is. And it's the same with the LGBTQ population here and a lot of other things, all the minorities, and stuff like that. Like, there's so many communities here. And I think to build community, you just have to start talking, start in a safe space. Like, don't go in the middle of the square, because obviously there's, it's not always safe, but find a space where you can speak, and then see who shows up, and then know that you're not alone, because you're not. It might feel like you are, but you're not. I hope that helps. I hope what I said helps. I hope so.
It's important what you bring up. First of all, that to identify is to be part of a community. Thanks, Sam, for writing that in. I mean, hello, yes. And I think, Carla, you're somebody, along with relatively small contingent of us, through LTD, through the Jeff Crows, and through various other places. The constellation's quite small in a
Yes.
conscious way. It's not that it's small necessarily, but there aren't a lot of people involved in a very central way, and there aren't a lot of artists having been given sort of the opportunities to develop and train and do what they want to do. There isn't a lot of space for people to come forward and discuss these things in just a general setting. I think we all know that, because if we're out in a space, I mean, if I'm out in a space with my many of my friends or peers, quite honestly, all I have to do is start talking about this to shut the conversation down.
Oh yeah, there's still a whole goes on, right?
So
I know.
yeah,
You said the wrong thing. Oh no.
or it's too deep, or why do we have to think about that? Or artists, actually, this is the one, John's gone now to look after himself, but one of the things that is pretty apparent in our community is that we have been confronted as an organization, as individuals within the organization, as being inappropriate because
that word
because we have challenged artists and the mindset of artists, whom assume or possess the place of, like, I'm an artist, of course my mind is open, you don't have to tell me this, you don't have to talk about this, it's just a given. And that feels like such an incredibly difficult barrier to work through, because I mean, I'm an artist, I'm a crip artist, and if I assume that I've got nothing left to learn about access, I need to move aside. Like, I just don't understand it from the perspective of people whom don't identify and also feel like my mind is so open because I'm an artist, I don't really need to listen.
I don't have to think about this. Yeah. It's kind of the way of kind of pushing it aside and just saying, well, that's the end of that conversation.
That's the end of that conversation.
I
know it's time for the next artist interruption, but before we do that, let's just hear from Vanessa.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to, launching off what you have just started talking about, is that like assuming that we're doing everything that we need to do and that things don't need to change, and that we don't need to adjust. It's like so often you hear, oh, we've been doing this the same way for 20 years. Why are we suddenly changing it now? And it's like, as history has gone on, we've always had to change. And I don't understand why there's always that struggle and that misunderstanding that, well, now we should just stick to where we're at. It's like, no, we're constantly moving, we're constantly evolving. And it just boggles my mind, basically, that people seem to just get really stuck. And then when you voice your concerns, when you say, well, maybe we need to do more, it's like, well, we're already doing so much. Well, but if it's not enough, it's great that those things are happening, but it's like, pardon my French, but it's a half-assed effort. It's if
Yeah.
it's and as like science and knowledge is constantly changing as we learn new things, so then we have to adapt with it to help people. And so yeah, it's really nice to hear other people that are in agreement with that.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa, because it's true that it is. Em just put in here, that's privileged thinking to me,
Yes.
and that summarizes it. And those of us who are within this sector, if we think, I mean, for myself, I'm a very privileged white woman working within this organization and within this province as an artist, and I'm a queer crip artist as well.
Yeah.
But if I didn't if I didn't acknowledge the privileges that I have, I mean, I could go on for a long time about this. I won't, because I know we get to listen to Kimberly right away. But it's mind-boggling. So we're gonna have another art interruption, and then the evening's getting close to coming to a close. But we did work in, relative to the last time we gathered, an extra possibility of an extra 30 minutes to basically come together in discussion. And that is like, come off of, everybody come in and discuss openly, should you want to. So we'll make some space to hear Kimberly, and then we will decide what to do as a community together. So I'm so excited to introduce Kimberly J, and they're going to present the beginning of a long poem on why I burnt the hospital down after Lawrence Benford. Is written and performed by this crip artist whom I've just met recently, and I'm thrilled. Here we go.
See, mic check. Can everybody hear me? If you can give me a thumbs up. Okay. The beginning of a long poem on why I burned the hospital down after Lawrence Benford. The doctors celebrated through my worsening illness, babbling in blood tests, CT scans pulsing through my veins. This sun shone darkness where light should have landed. Carved contempt instead of diagnosis, mental illness instead of lupus. I, out of the corners of my consciousness, only spot free of clutter and wayward shocks, shined on broken pieces of blood clots, drifted down through my arteries and veins, searching for a spot to stop the blood, to stop my consciousness. This hospital, stocked full of deafening, deadly arrogance. Black bodies too young and subhuman to be broken, medical care rationed for those white enough to wipe the slate clean. These hands built societies. Now pray for societies, not to pray on them, to pray for them. These brain cells burst of brilliance, sparks, electrical shocks burst into flames. So now I spit fire. My face melts into frozen, drooped half smiles. This Black woman, not allowed to feel pain as others do, for my right side to wither as this building burns, as holes meant to dispense cure are plugged with silence, contempt, and gasoline. I'll burn as much as this hospital does. My body, soulless. My body, soulless, forced to wither as the flame consumes the illness I was told was meant only in my head, trusting modern medical marvels not available to the bodies tortured to develop them. I watch this motherfucker burn. This heat evaporates tears never allowed to fall. This wind carries this flame through abandoned houses, other structures we were never meant to be, while beating the broken and the bloody. We watch insurrection, allow insurrection, spread rebellion throughout the wretched. Before gentrification kills us all, they decide to let nature take its course, and in this hospital outstretches its arms to keep us out. In a second, I am to be lynched. Watch the flames burn this space that wouldn't have allowed me in anyway. Flicker, then watch my skin pool into helplessness, my bones powder into dust, but still be the beast that I'm accused of being. I still hurt under the bravado and gasoline. I still swing from this noose and tree, and I will still watch this motherfucker burn as they sleep soundly in the warmth that their lullabied screams and melted bodies pooled with our ashes and bad medical advice provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Wow.
Songs.
Whew. Yeah. So we are at 3 minutes before 8. And I'm curious, I guess, about whether or not folks or some folks feel up to or inclined to want to stick around and discuss some of the things that that have been brought forward, or other things that have not come to fruition yet, really. Because what I want to say before we close this part is that the project is about creating a document that profiles some of the foundational aspects that seem to continue to go amiss in our province, probably elsewhere, but they continue to go amiss here. But also we want to, of course, include, work with, bring in the community in order to spotlight, to hear the voices of the community and in this process. So we will be holding like small group discussions or individual discussions if that supports people more appropriately. Some of them can be on Zoom, some of them can be live, whatever suits. We'll look to accommodate what would work best for people. And then in that, we will work with, from that there, and within there, we'll work with Ariana from Sask Arts Alliance, and as a researcher, but more appropriately as a peer collaborator, as somebody who will work with us to create comfort in the curiosities and questions we bring forward, and who will help us in a way distill some of the information that comes from the stories we'll hear and helps us to create this more formalized document. So that's what we're leaning, that's what we're moving towards, and it will be mighty reliant on us making the space comfortable enough to have the voices of folks like yourselves here tonight and others share what their experiences are, not necessarily on a personal level, but what they feel like they need to speak in order to understand that some of the needs that have not been met in their life, in their experience in the arts and cultural sector, could be framed in a way to add to this document around access and inclusion, intimate access and inclusion. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody. And let's let us know if you want to stick around a little bit, maybe by using using the hand raising icon or something, coming off mute, anything that you would like. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I will obviously be here, and Max will be here, and a group of community members. For those of you who are leaving, thank you so much for being here tonight. And a big thank you to Em and Jessica and Ariana at Sask Arts Alliance for opening your hearts and minds and arms to us, and to really be with us as partners moving this initiative forward. So thanks so much and lots of love, and we'll continue on for those who are staying. So I wonder if we could, if it would be possible, I don't know if this is possible or not technically, but I wonder if we would be able to come, would we be able to come in as a group, or that wouldn't work probably with Sue, right? We'd need Sue to be spotlight. Sue or Fatima, does it work to stay in this grid like this?
I'm just going to check with Fatima what she would like to do.
Thank you.
I can see the interpreter. That's not a problem. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's open it up. Oh, Shelby, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just going to say for Barry, who sent me a direct message, he wanted me to read this out loud. When mom and dad adopted me, they didn't focus on my disability, but on my abilities. Mom fought to put me in mainstream school. My 5th grade teacher was my godfather. They even built a huge desk that would fit my ever-growing wheelchair. I had that desk until my graduation. So Barry just wanted me to read that out loud.
Yeah, thank you. That's profound and beautiful, and sort of symbolically represents what we're talking about here in a way. Yeah, thank you, Barry. And I know you're not feeling well, so thank you so much for being here tonight. Yeah. So, yeah, where to move from here? I mean, part of our initiative and hope, I think, more than initiative, is to be able to follow, in a way, follow community. I mean, it's great to work with the team at SAA, because we recognize the need for some fluidity, right? There has to be fluidity in order for the project to actually remain sort of alive or potent inside of what we're attempting to do. And it really does have to center on not only the voice of myself, Carla, John, the folks who have been moving forward against that wall. Fatima, I don't know Fatima as well, but I'm guessing the same thing, moving against those barriers in order for things to change. And I don't know who said this, but somebody said something about not just, oh, it's Carla, not just for ourselves, of course, for the broader, like the community, but also for people in the future, deaf disabled people in the future, to not have to spend as much time and effort in this way, and actually being able to just feel safe and enjoy life, and from the arts perspective, be fucking artists. Like, just
Yeah.
be artists, not have to live and breathe advocating at every single stop almost that you're encountering. Yeah, Vanessa.
So I wanted to discuss one thing that I've experienced a lot being neurodivergent is frequently I get a lot of people making comparisons where they say, oh, well, this person has the same thing that you do and it's worse than yours, but they're doing way better than you are. So what's your holdup? And I think that like trying to make people understand that it's such a spectrum and that it's not possible to just like make an assumption based on like specifics, because there are so many circumstances that affect everything. And so it's like you can't make a comparison from one person to another, but you can, you know, aim to help as many as possible by doing the absolute best that you can. And yeah, it's just, I find it very frustrating when people kind of devalue your struggles by comparing to someone else's. And yeah, so I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if anybody else has kind of felt that way as well.
Yeah, not so much now, but when I was in Saskatchewan, yeah, that did happen to me. And I think too, like, why is it that like we have to compare? Like, why do we have to compare? What are you getting out of that? Like you ask that person, of course, and then if you speak up, then you're just a bother, right? And it's like, so then you have multiple oppressions going on. Yeah, I mean, just plug your ears and keep talking. Just plug your ears and keep talking, or plug whatever and keep talking.
Yeah, so true. I mean, the idea of comparison again feels like, I don't know, it feels like, I mean, aside from sort of putting ignorance forward, it is, I think, a unintentional or an intentional way of oppressing. And again, from the voice of folks who are identifying or live as deaf or disabled, I mean, that is another, the energy, this is the thing, the energy that it takes to confront that over and over and over and over and over again is mind boggling. It's the level of exhaustion, tiredness, of frustration. For myself, I just started recently saying, I'm just going to talk about it. I have a very wonderful, and it's, I think, probably part of growing up disabled. I have a wonderful range of emotion. I have a very big range of emotion. And I live in a body and mind that understands murderous rage. And it's not like I want to practice it all the time, and it's not all that great to confront. However, the fact is that these things work to feed the internal frenzies that occur for people who have disabilities, that will process things different, have disabilities that their mind processes things differently. And you can hear the slights from people in the way that you're spoken to, or in the way you're not listened to, depending on what it is, in the way that you're viewed. And interrupting that in a way like Max just said, by wiping it out, like, and carrying on, is important. And it also is important for us to be okay to understand that the energy that takes from a somatic perspective, the nervous system's perspective, is unimaginable. It's unimaginable. And so to start, for those of us who can or will, to start confronting that with from a place that this This is like you asking me to read another 17-page document before I speak on behalf of myself. That's the amount of energy that we're asking you to put out in this moment. And that's, I mean, obviously it's unethical, it's not equitable, and it's actually, from my perspective, it's becoming inhuman. Those places are becoming inhuman, the intersecting with those things, because it is again shining a light on somebody's privilege. Full stop.
Yeah, the privilege piece is pretty important. Sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to say something before Traci spoke, but just to that I don't know her name, the one that went before Max.
Either Vanessa or Carla, KK?
Vanessa, I think then.
Okay.
Okay. I have a brain injury and I keep getting worse. Like I'm forgetting more things now and just it's getting worse. And some people have noticed and compared me to like the old me, and they're like, why aren't you as good as you used to be? And I just thought that was really like you, but not. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, don't start. Thank you, KK. Thank you for bringing that forward and, just highlighting some of the stuff that we're talking about. For those of you who have not yet met KK, KK's, well, she's just an exceptional human, but I get to know KK through LTD voice and other things. And fairly recent to meeting KK, not all that long ago, and really very, very fertile artist, like inarguably, like just like a poetic sort of presence and like relationship with language, with movement, and also with observation and listening, like just amazing. So thank you, KK. Take up all the space you can and want, please.
Thank you, Traci.
Shelves?
Yeah, I just have some more words from Barry in the chat as a direct message to me. Sometimes I get people that hear my voice, think that I'm stupid until I open my mouth, and then I show them that I am smart and have abilities you don't.
Yeah. So thank you, Bear. And Bear has been part of LTD from the first well, it was long before it was LTD. 2006, I met Bear in the first workshop that I co-presented in Regina with a Toronto company, and Bear is still present within the organization and acting as a leader and in facilitation and on the board and other things. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that forward. Yeah, Barry helped name listen to this is absolutely right. Listen to this voice. Yeah. I mean, it's astounding. It is seriously hurtful and harmful, actually, really, to witness like some of your stories that I've had the privilege of hearing from you, and you know, because of because of cerebral palsy and breath flow and lung capacity and the way that affects language, spoken language, the assumption that Barry is, well, I'm not going to say the word, don't need to, but the assumptions that are made are unbelievable. And then you partner that, or you put that beside the human and what they bring to the world and what they bring out. And again, heightens this idea of the ignorance that's still prevalent within our society is, well, it's simply ignorant.
And then Traci, may I?
Of course.
In the chat, Vanessa has said, it seriously amazes me how people can be so careless with their words. It's incredible that they could make such a hurtful comparison as though the struggles make a person less than they were.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Vanessa, that's like I think you continue to bring me back to, in essence, this thing that we're hoping to intersect with in the making of this document. And I trust me when I say I understand the irony, because it's a document. And it won't catch everything, of course. But I'd like to share something. I didn't get to it today, and we'll maybe email this out, Em and Shelbs. But there's a really a really great document floating around that was created by what are they called? I'm losing the name
Creative
of
Users Projects.
Thank you so much. Creative Users Project, and it's a document that talks about their work to go in and sort of do something similar to what we're attempting to do. However, it changed a whole lot once they started doing it, because what they figured out was, I'm going to see if I can find the writing, because it's a lot more summarized than I'll ever do. Where is it? Yes, here it is. Accessing the arts. That in this document, Accessing the Arts, they found out that the disability arts community exists in spirit in most cases, but lacks a strong physical presence or centralized digital presence even. And they talk about a number of things in a fairly accessible way from my perspective. I don't read things easily because I have dyslexia, but I managed to get through 21 pages today, which was nothing short of some kind of beautiful miracle. However, one of the things that was spoken about is that the people who were spoken to in the discussions that were had over a 2-year period really it was summarized to say the reality that deaf and disabled people regularly assume that art is not for them, and therefore they are not seeking out artistic experience to begin with, was highlighted as a major point within this document. And this is Canadian, by the way. And then they went on to talk about how access by request does not situate access as a central consideration. And it's not that it's negative, but that this default action is not the solution. And then they also talked about disabilities are not predictable. The symptoms within disabilities are not predictable. They fluctuate. Therefore, this requires flexibility. Flexibility around refunds or exchange policies to be in places for things like, they spoke about tickets, but I also added like development workshops and anything that has a monetary obligation tied to it. Because if not, then everything you go to do is a risk, a monetary risk. And I think that this document, for anybody who was here tonight when we send it out, and also for us in the creation of this document that we're going to make, is really important, because they did distill those thoughts to such an extent that I feel like we'll all be able to get what they're saying. And they have done a good job at being direct, and also being sort of inviting, because that's the one thing we get challenged with all the time. We fight quite a lot here in our work, pretty much constant. We're in fight, but not like, "Ugh," but just like attitudes. And we want to help people understand that building access is not only going to intersect with the disability community. Access is for everyone. It's for everyone. It's not a disabled thing only. And the coming together and an understanding of that, I feel, is really important if we want to move things along. Yeah, Shelps.
Just another message from Barry. Mom and Dad bought me my very first typewriter that started my journey as a writer.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very personal aside, but man, would have I loved to meet your parents. The stories and the beautiful things that you've shared is wow. Yeah. I really quite enjoy the awkward pauses.
I miss him so much.
I know you do. I know. Kimberly, I didn't know you were still here. Yes.
I am, so I'm about to head out to another meeting. I just wanted to say, listening to everyone's perspective is rather profound for me. I live well, I'm from the US. I'm currently in Mexico. And so accessibility across different parts of the US and in Mexico are like multiple different things. And it always changes according to whether or not my disability is visible or it's not visible. I had a stroke, it's kind of what the poem talked about a little bit. And that caused a disorder called aphasia, which affects my ability to read, write, speak, comprehend language. So when I sound coherent and clear, it's great. I'm a World Rake Slam poet. When my speech is slurred or when I use my cane, I have been completely ignored in poetry venues. Like, wow, I'm a World Rank Slam poet and I'm not allowed to go on stage because of how I sound at this moment in time. If I'm using my cane, then people are nicer to me, to be honest with you. But it also depends on if I have on a mask, because I look too young to need a cane. So then it's, oh, you must be faking it because you don't look old enough to have a stroke. I also don't look old enough to have a 22-year-old, but I have one of those too.
Yeah, I understand what you mean because my voice is always that yes. And every time I want to prove that I am smart and I have abilities, I always have to step on the naysayers.
Yeah, it's like you could have as many degrees, as much life experience, as many letters behind your name. But the second you're speechless, then you don't. And I'm being that I'm African American, I'm a female, and the greater majority of the time my head is almost bald. So it's like, and then I'm like 5'2", right? So when I walk into spaces as a short, bald Black woman who doesn't look my age, right? With a slurred speech, the first thought is I must be a drug addict. Or I must be in a mental health crisis. And not to say anything against anyone in a mental health crisis, but when that happens and you try to go to the doctor's office, they're not trying to medically treat you. So then you're denied access to medical care because they just automatically assume, like, y'all have to fight me to take the medication I'm supposed to take. So, you know, it's an interesting space versus being here in Mexico. I can have my cane, I cannot have my cane. People are nice regardless. You know, me slurring through Spanish, they're just like, oh, you tried. You're so sweet. We like the fact that you tried. Slurring through English with other English speakers, it can be traumatizing, to say in the least. So then I find myself being quiet in spaces when necessary. Attempting to read something and it's not coming out right, or you know, sometimes you'll say the wrong word, and so I'm reading the word, I don't know, catch. The word cat might come out, dog might come out, any random word might just come out at that moment in time, and then people are making very rapid decisions about your ability or your intellect, and then they make those decisions and decide what you have a right to access to. And then we add that to, if you're on disability within the US, I can't speak for outside the US, if you do anything that makes above like $1,300 a month, they can throw you off a disability, which means you lose your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what?
Yep.
Like you're in a constant cycle of, how much poverty do I need to really have to maintain access to medical care? Hence, I spend a lot of time here in Mexico because that allows you to live a comfortable life and not lose your health insurance. It's, you know, like some of the accessibility conversation, at least for us in the US, is being able to keep your insurance and also being able to have a income that you can survive off of.
Yeah.
Because even like if it goes up too much, then you have to, the way the insurance works, it's 80-20. So there's another pot of funds that pays the 20. But then if your income goes up too high, but really not enough to take care of yourself, you lose that 20% payment. And so, you know, just for a frame of reference, the last time I was in the hospital, it was $70,000. So 20% of $70,000 is what I would have had to pay out of pocket.
Wow.
So on that note, very excited that these conversations are being had and that, you know, things can begin to change for us all around the world. I do have to say goodnight because I'm now late to my other meeting, but thank you for this space. I really do appreciate it. I enjoyed everybody hearing voices, hearing your work, and I really appreciate that. Y'all have a good night.
Can't wait to see you again. Bye.
Bye.
Amazing. Yeah, Shelby, are you going to talk about that where Sue is going to have to leave in a couple minutes?
Yeah, that's why my hand's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that. Hi, Julia and Yolanda. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think this is an indication when we gather like this, an indication of how many stories could be shared within the right, like with the right environment built, so that we can really start not only hearing one another's story, which is in and of itself important, but start really understanding where the through lines or crossovers are, because listening to Kimberly just now, you know, there's a story that very, very recently in the whole scheme of things, I felt quite ill and I ended up at a neurologist's office here in Regina. And the neurologist opened my file as I sat and looked at it, and he closed it and said, and started getting up as he said, "You're in the wrong office." And I was like, oh, I don't understand. I thought had gone literally to the wrong office, and I didn't move. And he was saying, well, what are you doing still sitting here? You're in the wrong office. You have a psychiatric disability, you should see a psychiatrist. And this was for me literally confronted by a neurological issue that was causing me to literally fall on my face over and over and over again for about a year and a half. So the discrimination within many different systems and sectors is alive and very well. We are moving forward, which is important also to celebrate. We are having this conversation, and there's many others like this happening in places like Max was talking about, and that's amazing. And I think we can't forget that. Also, we need to really create the spaces for these conversations to be had so that we can inform community about, I feel okay to say, what are the expectations where access is concerned, in this case in Saskatchewan within the art sector, because quite honestly, I have an expectation that artists and the sector itself is alive enough to respond to what a othered or marginalized culture is saying. As a matter of fact, I would feel okay to say I would demand it at this time in my life within the career. Anyway.
It's funny that the disabled community is the one group that is doing something about accessibility for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's so. That's really true. It's interesting. In the document that Becky brought forward earlier, Beck's still here. I know that somewhere on the website, the I've forgotten the name of it at this moment, so it's probably not going to come back. We See You White American Theater. Within one of the documents on that website, I don't know what they were referred to, but they said something likened to, we want to thank the disability cultural leaders for the conversations they were leading, and that inspired us to do the same. And I feel like that's okay to take in and hear and understand that there is, like Max has said over and over again, there is a movement, a global movement occurring. And that movement is possibly slowly, but incrementally taking more space and engaging with more people. And that's what's really important to sort of get a hold of. And also to be okay to say to people, allyship is really important part of all of this. But being an ally is a fuck of a lot of work. It is, if it isn't a lot, if it is not costing you a little bit, you're probably not really aligning completely, because it's a lot of work. And so I think it's okay for us to, in solidarity, come together to say that this is true, and not be as frightened or intimidated by that big place of like, just let things be. Why are you so intense? Why do you have to bring these things up? Why is this important to us? Blah, 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 blah. And still say, well, until I feel like I'm at home inside of the theater in all elements, and that the other crip theater artists are, then we're not finished. We're not finished. It's simply not finished. Anyway, I do understand that Sue has already worked a number of minutes over the allotted time. So I feel like it's a good time to say goodnight and realize that this is the very beginning of a larger conversation. And we will be reaching out to everyone that was here, not only to share a couple of documents, but to continue the conversation and figure out how would suit people best to come together to be heard and participate in this project.
And I won't be sick.
Yeah, hopefully not, right? Yeah, but truly, sincerely, thank you, Max. amazing.
welcome.
Thank you always, you know.
You're welcome.
And of course, M and Jessica, wow. And Shelby, you know, I often say everybody needs a Shelby. And I can say quite honestly that the organization would not be doing as much as we're doing in the way that we're doing it without this,
Damn right.
without this human.
Damn right.
Yeah. So blessings to everyone. Thank you so much, Fatima. Thank you for bringing your brilliant art. Love that. Becky, thank you for being here and for listening and for initiating the whole project, quite frankly. And yeah, love to all of you until next time.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Oh, this is, I just found out that my unit